I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime, and this is Currents.
The surprising story of how a doctor returned to her faith and became a pro-life advocate.
It's a throwdown between spirituality and religion.
I don't have to agree with you, I don't have to like what you do, but I don't have to spend all my energy trying to change you.
And some ancient texts are right at your fingertips.
With every new exposure, it's a new field for scholarly research.
Well, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. Last week, it was announced that for the first time, a patient who was partially paralyzed with a spinal cord injury was being treated in a government-approved embryonic stem cell study. It was hailed as a breakthrough, but there are some critics, including the Catholic Church. They're voicing their opposition because the research involves destroying human embryos.
It is that opposition that has doctors like Teresa Deisher looking for some other answers. Now, Deisher is the founder of Ave Maria Biotechnology, and that's a pro-life research group. She's now part of a lawsuit against the government. But there's also another story here, Deisher's her own journey, actually, involving her return to the Catholic Church. I had a chance to speak with her recently by phone. Teresa, thank you so much for joining us today on Currents. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, Teresa, you've been in biotechnology for many years, and you actually founded a new biotechnology firm. AVM stands for Ave Maria Biotechnology. Tell us why you founded it.
Ave Maria Biotechnology was founded because the moral abuses, particularly the use of fresh aborted fetal tissue and cell lines for drug discovery and development, are so pervasive that it's not possible for a pro-life scientist to work in the biomedical field and not have their conscience challenged and violated. So AVM was founded to directly address that and provide alternative medicines as well as professional opportunities for pro-life scientists.
So what specifically then kind of work does your company do?
Our two priorities currently are on vaccines and stem cells. And our vaccine initiative is to develop morally produced alternatives to vaccines such as MMR, chickenpox, hepatitis A, and a few other vaccines that are currently only available in the U.S. through the use of aborted fetal cell lines for vaccine production. There's no business, scientific, or technical reason why that has been done. And so our mission is to provide alternatives to those patients who object. And then we're also working on stem cell targeting and delivery mechanisms in order to enable adult stem cells to reach their full clinical potential.
And you were not always affiliated with this kind of a biotechnology firm. You, I was reading some information about you before, converted, or rather I should say returned back to the Catholic faith. You were Catholic, and then you sort of were away from the church and came back to it, and now with this renewed interest on maintaining these kinds of principles in your work as well. Tell us about returning to the Catholic faith for you personally.
As someone who left the faith, I never had contempt or disregard for the faith of other people or their rights to have conscience and have faith. What I found in my professional career, I've been in the commercial biotechnology field since 1988, was a disregard for the values and the conscience rights not only of other professionals working in the company, but also a complete disregard for patient well-being. And when I say that, I'm referring to the early days, about 15 years ago. We'd had embryonic stem cells since 1980 in mice and other animals, and the dogma at that time said that adult stem cells did not exist. And with the discovery of adult stem cells in the late 1990s, adult stem cells other than for blood formation, which scientific dogma said did not exist, embryonic stem cell proponents quite viciously attacked and suppressed that work. And one has to step back and ask, if they are truly working in the interests of patients, why would someone suppress adult stem cell science? Because to be treated with one's own stem cells is always the best option for a patient when it's possible. And watching this suppression of adult stem cell work so that they could justify and convince the public to support embryonic stem cell efforts led me to question much of my conscience formation at that time and really take a look at the secular values of some in the scientific world and decide that those values were not consistent with my internal natural values and beliefs.
And also you've taken it even a step further, and now you have a suit against the federal government. If you can, just sum that up quickly, as this is my last question for you today.
The federal lawsuit is to block NIH funding of human embryonic stem cell research because it is specifically illegal from the Dickey-Wicker Amendment that Congress has passed every year since 1996. And a decision to fund embryonic stem cell research violates that Dickey-Wicker Amendment. And that's what the suit is about. The funding is illegal, and so we've sued to stop it.
All right. Well, Teresa, thank you so much for being with us on Currents today. The work is fascinating and interesting to share with our viewers. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And that is Teresa Deisher, founder of Ave Maria Biotechnology. She also started a nonprofit, the Sound Choice Pharmaceutical Institute, and they do similar work.
Well, stay tuned. There's much more Currents coming up straight ahead. When we come back, the day's headlines, including Washington, D.C. gets a new cardinal and a new seminary. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime. Coming up just a bit later, the Dead Sea Scrolls, those ancient texts, well, they could soon be making their way to your desktop.
But first, let's turn to the day's headlines. Well, as Catholic bishops from the Middle East continue discussions during their synod at the Vatican, leaders from other churches in the region are pushing for peace. We get details from Rome Reports.
Representatives from the main churches in the Middle East participating in the synod have asked the international community to help Israel in achieving peace. This took place during a meeting in Rome organized by the Catholic movement Communion and Liberation. In attendance was the mayor of Rome and the minister of Foreign Affairs of Italy. The Patriarch of Antioch for the Melkite Greek in Syria said that if the international community created Israel, then they also must bring peace there. He noted that peace in the Middle East will contribute to improved relations across the world.
We need to help Israel pursue peace. Israel cannot make peace because it maintains dual ideals. One is religious, that Israel is the promised land, and that they should stay there, and the second is its national ideas.
Gregorios Laham stressed that Jerusalem is the center of faith for Christian, Jews, and Muslims. Because of this, he suggested that the political capital be moved to another city. For his part, the Patriarch of Alexandria of the Copts, Egypt, said both the churches and governments are doing everything possible to end the conflict between Israel and Palestine.
The Holy See, our local churches, the Ecumenical Council of the Middle East, and the governments of our countries, especially in Egypt, are doing everything to bring the two parties together, to consider the positive aspects of their people, and to have the courage to make the difficult decisions in achieving a just and lasting peace.
The patriarchs also spoke of religious freedom in the Middle East. Gregorios Laham III said that Saudi Arabia is the only country with no freedom of worship. In addition, the Patriarch Naguib said there is still no freedom of conscience in the Middle East.
There is freedom of worship throughout the Arab world, except Saudi Arabia. All at different levels, because the situation in Lebanon is different to that of Syria, Jordan or Egypt. Freedom of religion is generally secured, but freedom of conscience is much less secure. For this reason, the Synod emphasized the importance of having respect for the freedom of others and to overcome religious interests in favor of greater justice and equality.
The Patriarch of Antioch of the Syrians and Lebanese said that religious freedom must be guaranteed to all minorities living in the Middle East.
The majority religion should allow religious freedom, especially that of conscience, for all minority religions, not just Christians.
All patriarchs have said that in recent years relations have improved with Muslims, and they are increasingly willing to talk. This is an important start to reach the desired peace in the Middle East.
Well, back in this country now, the military's don't ask, don't tell policy is back again. The 9th District Court of Appeals Wednesday granted the federal government's request for a stay on a lower court decision that ruled the law unconstitutional. Don't ask, don't tell bans people who are openly homosexual from serving in the armed forces. After the lower court decision, the Pentagon began accepting applications from openly gay recruits. But the appeals court decision puts that on hold pending the appeal. Well, after several high-profile cases of homosexual teens being bullied and then committing suicide, a new program aims to get Christian teens to take a stand against the bullying. The Golden Rule Pledge program recently introduced new curriculum that its creator hopes will help Christian teens become leaders against bullying. The Christian Post reports the Golden Rule Pledge encourages respect and concern toward homosexuals without compromising religious beliefs.
An Italian court says it will not give the Vatican Bank access to the nearly $32 million seized during a money laundering investigation. The government is investigating the Vatican Bank for possible violations of strict new rules on money transfers. The Vatican argued it could easily clear up misunderstandings about the transfers, but the court ruled otherwise. The spokesman says the Vatican Bank will appeal. Well, we told you earlier in the week about several Anglican bishops and congregations all around the world that are seeking to enter the Catholic Church. Now, the head of the Anglican Church says that he wants the ability to give input on that process. Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. Rowan Williams, told reporters he was taken aback that the Vatican established ordinariates, the structure for Anglicans to enter the Catholic Church, without consulting with Anglican leadership. Archbishop Williams says his church is taking steps to establish a joint group to keep an eye on how it is going to happen. Meantime, the man who heads up the ordinariates in this country made headlines Wednesday when he was named a cardinal, but some other good news for Washington. Archbishop Donald Wuerl went largely unnoticed. The archdiocese in the nation's capital announced that it's going to open a new seminary. Archbishop Wuerl says interest in the priesthood is on the rise, and the numbers tell the story. The archdiocese has a total of 67 seminarians, and that is compared to just 44 10 years ago.
Good news for Washington. Stay tuned, there's more Currents coming up. Just ahead, what's the difference between being spiritual and being religious? We'll have a discussion.
Spirituality, which traditionally was under the umbrella of religion, is now seen to be more open, more free, when in fact the growth of spirituality came out of religious traditions.
Welcome back. Well, a survey last spring found that a majority of the so-called millennial generation, those are young people ages 18 to 29, don't pray, don't read the Bible, and they don't worship.
Well, our Natalia Ortiz wanted to look into this a little bit more, and she joins us now from the studio. Natalia.
Thank you, Matt and Francesca. That survey by Lifeway Christian Resources found that 72% of millennials, that's nearly 3/4, consider themselves spiritual but not religious. To find out just what that means, I sat down recently to talk with Tim Reedy from American Magazine and Dr. Patrick Wanis, a human behavior expert. Thank you, Patrick and Tim, for being with us today. So I think it's no secret that the movement of being spiritual, not religious, is increasingly popular. And first of all, just so that we can define the terms, if you can explain what are the differences, or before the 1900s, spirituality and religious, or spiritual and religious, were used interchangeably. What are the differences that you see today?
Well, spirituality is really about a personal and individual connection and belief in God, free of dogma, free of institutions, and free of almost limitations, meaning that you tend to have a more open approach to the pathway to God, or the pathway to believing in a higher power, or even worshipping a higher power.
Okay. Tim, would you agree with that?
Yes. I mean, the term religion, religious, has taken on a different connotation, as you say, over the last 100 years, and it's taken on a negative connotation. And spirituality, which traditionally was under the umbrella of religion, is now seen to be more open, more free, when in fact the growth of spirituality came out of religious traditions.
And so why do you think that this has become so popular or so trendy? I mean, we hear it all over the place. People are no longer subscribing, or not that they're no longer subscribing, but it is becoming more common for people to say, you know, I don't want to belong to organized religion.
Well, I think that's because when a person says I'm spiritual, they're trying to say, I've gone to these greater depths and I've made these choices and I've explored all these various avenues and religions. Doesn't mean it's necessarily true, but the person's trying to say, look, I've really thought about this and this is how I came to this conclusion. I'm not blindly following an institution or one particular religion or line of faith.
Okay, and what are the, not the consequences, but what do you think could be the dangers of not belonging to a church?
I think that's for Tim more than me.
Well, I don't know about you, but for me, if I did not have the discipline of, you know, a tradition where required to go to Mass every Sunday, have certain prayers that I can go to, the resources that a tradition offers. If I did not have that, I think I would feel a bit at sea, at loss, and I think I'm not alone in that. So I think that's one danger there, is that you can say, okay, I'm spiritual, I'm going to commit myself to praying, to have some kind of relationship with God, but without the structures in place, you can lose some of that.
Now, I'm actually going to support something that Tim says, which is funny because I'm here to talk about the advantages of spirituality.
Right.
The problem has been that as people moved away from religion, they left religion behind, but they also left a lot of morality behind. So in our society, once upon a time, the very structure and foundation of morality was religion. People have left that behind, but then they haven't taken on their own morality. And so it's become more a case of, well, I'm going to do what I feel like rather than what's right. And so it is easy for someone that believes is spiritual to just follow fancy-free emotion rather than saying, I still need to keep myself in check, I still need to maintain discipline, integrity, and morality.
Could it also be that people are becoming increasingly non-committal, and this whole sense of being individuals and not having to report, so to speak, to anybody else?
Well, I think, you know, and Tim will probably agree with me, that there's two extremes. You have the extreme of the person who says, look, I feel like I'm being stifled or suffocated in a religion. Then you have the other person who says, well, I can do whatever I want, and just changes their mind on the day.
Yes, I think the tradition for a lot of people can see kind of stultifying, but the hope is that they can find ways within the community to kind of practice their own faith, to kind of, you know, that at least, for example, within the Catholic tradition, which I belong to, there's a lot of different ways of practicing your faith. There's not one set way of doing things. There's different saints, there's different traditions.
Different prayers.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a framework for us there. Now, you spoke of community, and I think that's an element that a lot of people will also appreciate regarding belonging to a church. Why? What do you have to say about that?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think it helps when you have people who share the same set of beliefs, people who can kind of give you the support when you need it in difficult times, people who can share, you know, the resources that they've discovered within the tradition. So I think community is key and essential, and for me, I think doing it all by myself is not very attractive, but doing it with a group of people is a lot more satisfying.
Community is something that is really an important part of human behavior and healthy human functioning. The challenge is if you get in a community that then can move you away from your very faith or belief. So for example, if you're in a church or church, synagogue, whatever your beliefs are, and you begin to see hypocrisy, or you begin to see that the people aren't following the very things they believe in, then that can actually push you away from your faith. It can stumble you or make you say, you know what, I'm not going to do this, I'm not even going to believe in God. And you know, that was some of my personal experiences. So at the same time, whilst there is an advantage of community, you've got to make sure that you're in the right community and that you don't end up giving these people more power over your beliefs, in the sense of, well, I'm going to be told of this is the only way to God. And one of the challenges I have with religion is that once we begin to believe in a specific religion, we're saying that everyone else is false, I have the only access to God, or I am now claiming ownership of God. And I think that's a real danger. That's not only is that a danger, because that doesn't mean much, what it does is it starts to make you judge other people and move away from the very things you're supposed to believe in, which is about love and acceptance and forgiveness. You know, I don't have to agree with you, I don't have to like what you do, but I don't have to spend all my energy trying to change you. I can focus on doing what I'm meant to be doing.
I think I would say that judging people is a danger of being involved with any institution, that you judge people who are not involved, judge people who don't have the same set of beliefs as you do. But I think in this case, when there's this movement towards spirituality, people within religious traditions should see this as a good thing, to see this as a manifestation of some need, of some desire, and they should find a way to try to meet that desire.
I don't understand what you mean by that. Desire for what? For spirituality?
Yes, for God, for spirituality, for something larger than themselves.
One of the other challenges that I also have with religion is if you look at a lot of the history of all of the religions, they have very strong principles and beliefs that tend to be condemnatory and judgmental. If you look at the father of the Western Church, which was Tertullian and even Augustine, they condemned women. You know, they said women were the evil temptresses. They were an eternal danger to mankind. Now, maybe they'll go back to Adam and Eve, but I don't think that anywhere in the Bible, the teaching, or even in spirituality, it's the idea that, you know, we're male, so therefore we're superior. Women are bad, they're evil, they're an eternal danger to mankind. So again, what's happening is, rather than a one-on-one connection with God, we're now starting to say, I'm superior, you're inferior. We're making judgments.
Now, I understand what you're saying, but what is, you know, I think that the spirituality sometimes, when someone says, I am not going to subscribe to a particular religion, it becomes just a one-on-one, just like you said, with God. Right. And so isn't that also dangerous?
Well, it depends what you're doing with that one-on-one. If I'm a person that believes in God and I'm following my heart in the sense of, because something I didn't mention earlier is spirituality is also about service to other people. So if I'm engaging in serving other people in a positive way, then I don't see that as a danger. I don't see that as negative.
Well, but nobody holds you accountable. I mean, I think, Tim, what would you say about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a danger, is that we're all human beings. I mean, we have our faults, and you know, to have that kind of discipline where you're called upon to, you know, if you say, I'm going to be spiritual, I'm going to have a relationship with God or the Spirit, that calls for a certain commitment. And some people can do it, but some people can't. And I think for a lot of people, the wisdom of a tradition offers something that can give them the kind of sustaining, over the long term satisfaction that they're looking for.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. We have no more time. I apologize, but I am so glad that you were able to come with us today.
Thank you.
There is a glimmer of hope. The Pew Forum reported earlier this year that while millennials may lag in belonging, they don't when it comes to believing. Researchers say they just express their faith differently. Matt, back to you.
All right. Thank you very much. Very interesting discussion, Natalia. Thanks. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
When we return, no treasure hunt here, an easy way to read some ancient texts. Finally tonight, a little glimpse at history in the making, as one of the oldest records of early Christianity and Judaism is given a 21st century twist.
It's the Dead Sea Scrolls. We alluded to that a little bit earlier on in the show. And as CNN's Kevin Fowler tells us, one of the world's most important archaeological finds could soon be just a mouse click away.
Out of the darkness, light.
Now notice the edges, how they're becoming clear.
Text from an ancient manuscript revealed.
And if you enlarge it, you'll see that it is as clear as can be.
21st century technology brought to bear on a wonder of the first century, the Dead Sea Scrolls. Israel's Antiquities Authority has teamed up with internet search giant Google to digitize all 30,000 fragments of the scrolls, one of the most important archaeological discoveries ever made. They are hoping the results will be clear to both experts and novices alike.
Here, actually, with the eye, with regular photography, you can barely read. But you saw that with a multispectral imaging and whatever goes beyond the infra, all of this was completely clear. With every such exposure or new exposure, it's a new field for scholarly research.
Discovered in a cave by a nomadic shepherd in 1947, the scrolls contain the first known copy of the Hebrew Bible and shed light on the relationship between early Christian and Jewish religious traditions. For decades, they've been accessible only to scholars. But after testing the latest in spectral and infrared imaging technology, scientists are ready to scan the whole collection and make it available on a searchable and public website. Google, with its high-powered search and translation services, will help catalog the massive material. But the internet heavyweight says the project is not for profit and not exclusive.
I can envision scholars or other companies contributing their own technologies so as to get some additional value over the data.
The project will cost $3.5 million. But one scholar of the scrolls has no concern about corporate involvement and says it's the possibility of new discoveries that matters.
Any new line is a treasure, any new letter is a treasure, because sometimes for one line or for one word, you may gain new understanding of things which before were not correctly read or understood.
There are 30,000 fragments of the scrolls to be scanned and cataloged. Organizers won't say how long the entire project will take, but the first images could be online within months, and before long, unraveling the mysteries of the Dead Sea Scrolls will be a click or several thousand clicks away.
Really fascinating. They're obviously treating it with great care there, trying to catalog it.
Right.
But what's really interesting is that it's not that the Dead Sea Scrolls haven't been around for a while. You know, it's that, well, I mean,
obviously they have.
known to us, but that it's that more eyes haven't been able to see them.
Right.
And so putting it up this way allows more scholars to look into it and then perhaps lend their insights.
Yeah, technology is so amazing to be able to put all of these 2,000-year-old documents in, you know, you saw what condition they're in, but now, I mean, through the scanning that they're able to do, you're able to actually read text that wasn't visible before and all that. Technology is amazing. Google one day is probably going to own the world, but technology is amazing. So.
I would like some stock in that. You can give it to me, thanks. Okay.
There you go.
Well, that is it for tonight. And coming up tomorrow, we head into the deep with Bishop DiMarzio to talk about something close to his heart and to the hearts of many Catholics. That is the Rosary.
In the meantime, though, remember we're always online. CurrentsNY.net is our website. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Until next time, I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime. Thanks so much for joining us and have a great night.